October 10th, 2017. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Delarusso. Present. Councilor Falco. Present. Councilor Knight. Councilor Long-Kern. Present. Vice President Marks.
Present.
Councilor Scarpelli.
Present.
President Cavallaro.
Presence. Please rise and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 17433, Andy's Pizzeria, Middlesex Avenue, Medford, special permit, 90-day review, October 10, 2017. We have Mr. Bavuso, the code enforcement officer from the city. Mr. Bavuso, have there been any complaints or problems at Andy's Pizzeria that, to your knowledge?
No, sir, there is not.
There have been no complaints. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Bavuso? Councilor Delarusso.
I do not have any questions for Mr. Bavuso. I motion that there being no complaints found, that we continue their permit unabated.
On the motion by Councilor Delarusso that we move to the next stage of theirs, which is another hour and another 90 days. Seconded by? Seconded by Councilor Longo-Kern. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Motion by Councilor Scarpelli for suspension of the rules. Seconded by Councilor Delarusso. All those in favor?
Aye.
Petitions, presentations, and similar matters. 17694, petition for a common victual license by James Leo for Wegmans, Massachusetts, Inc., 3850 Mystic Valley Parkway, Medford. The file was handed over to the licensing chairman, which is Councilor Scarpelli.
Thank you, Mr. President. I found all the paperwork in order, and I move to accept and move forward with this.
On the motion by Councilor Scarpelli, seconded by Councilor Delarusso. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
17695, petition for common victular license by Gary Harden, 235 West 3rd Street, Unit 3, Boston, Mass. 02127 for Me's Place, LLC, doing business as Rose's Roast Beef and Pizza, 51 High Street, Medford, Mass. Name and address for the record, please. Name and address for the record, please.
My name and address?
Yes.
Gary Harden, 235 West 3rd Street, South
Thank
Boston, Mass. 02127.
Thank you. Councilor Scarpelli, you have the file.
I do. Thank you, Mr. President. I find all the paperwork is in order, so this is just a few questions to the petitioner. As this is just a transfer, you're taking over, are you maintaining the same business?
Yes.
So nothing's changing?
No changes, right?
You understand the work hours and what we have for your hours of operations?
Yes.
Familiar? Okay. I find everything in order, Mr. President. Move forward, accepting this petitioner.
On the motion by Councilor Scarpelli, seconded by Councilor Knight. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you. Good luck.
17696. Dear Mr. President, City Councilors, I respectfully request and recommend that your honorable body approves the appropriation of free cash in the amount of $10,000 to fund the purchase of cameras for code enforcement in compliance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 148A, Code Enforcement Officer, Section 5, Fines, Penalties, and Assessment. The balance in free cash before this vote is $7,823,993. The revised free cash as of 6/30/17 has not been certified by the state at the time. City Commissioner John Bavuso is here to present and answer any of the council's questions regarding this matter. Mr. Bavuso. Councilor Longo-Kern.
Thank you, President Caraviello.
Thank you, Mr. Ravuzzo, for coming to explain this. Maybe just a little more detail about what type of cameras, how many we're purchasing, what they're gonna do, just a little more detail.
Absolutely. 3 high-quality, commercial-grade, infrared night vision cameras that are what they call quick deploy. Means that we can set them up and move them very simply. They're self-contained, they come with a router, they transmit to our cellular data network. They'll be monitored at the police station, and hopefully we'll get a receiver at City Hall in the near future.
And if you could, what's the reasoning for getting the cameras? What are we gonna be doing with them?
We're going to monitor, we have a lot of dumping sites throughout the city that happens. We have some favorite sites to go in. We've had a few problems downtown recently with small thievery, petty stuff. Some elderly people have been slightly harassed by the people hanging out in the square. So we hope that they have the cameras will be able to let us see anybody caught in the act of bothering somebody or stealing anything, any criminal activity.
Oh, so they'll be portable and you'll be able to move them around and
That's
catch?
correct.
Oh, okay. Great, thank you.
Councilor Knight.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Mr. Bavusso, thank you for that presentation. Ultimately, Mr. President, this council has requested the purchase of portable security cameras for the purpose of code enforcement on numerous occasions in the past. Here we have an opportunity to appropriate the funding to make that a reality. I move approval.
Thank you. Vice President Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. As Councilor Knight just mentioned, this has been a request of this council for the past several years. And I would hope that, I know these are portable, but I would hope that one of the first stops will be Commercial Street and the dumping that has taken place on Commercial Street over the years. And I would hope that would be one of the first stops.
It is absolutely high on the list. Yes, it is.
That area is notorious for all sorts of garbage, refrigerators, you name it, sofas. Everything shows up on that street because it's poorly lit at night and there's not much traffic there at all. And it's a constant problem.
Absolutely.
I support this wholeheartedly, Mr. President.
Councilor Scarpelli.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I follow my colleagues in this endeavor. I think that what we'll get back in fines and penalties would be tenfold, and I think it would be automatically. So I appreciate your work in making this come to fruition, and I support this wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. I believe this is just a start. I think that what we're going to get from these 3 cameras is going to show us how valuable they are. And
That's
there'll be
great.
more.
Thank you.
Councilor Falco.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Bavusso, thank you very much for your report as well. This is something I support 100%. We've needed this for a long time, and I know this council has talked about this repeatedly. I just have a quick question. As far as the cameras go, I mean, how many, we're starting off with 3. I mean, ideally, do you think we could use more?
We ideally could. I mean, these are a high-quality camera. They are about $3,000, a little more than $3,000 each. So we'd like to get the cameras in use, make sure they're working up to our expectations, and begin collecting some money back for them.
Okay, great. And as far as, I'm just thinking, as far as the future goes and from a budgeting perspective, do you know what the life expectancy is for one of these cameras, especially if they're outside? I mean, I'm just, is this something that you have to purchase on a pretty regular basis?
I don't know what the life expectancy is. The company that we're contracting to does all the maintenance and warranty work on them. So again, it's a high-quality commercial-grade camera they use throughout the city of Boston, the city of Somerville. So we have looked at that. I don't know what the life period is, but they're made for exposure to the elements.
Okay, it's okay. I mean, this is, I think, a great initiative. I'm glad to see that we're moving forward with it and move approval. Thank you.
Councilor Dela Russo.
Second.
Councilor O'Kern.
Just one quick question. You said there's gonna be a router and the video will come up at the police station?
Yes.
So if you find out there was dumping, then your office, building department would go to the police station to review the footage?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's how it's gonna work. We're not gonna have somebody sitting there and reviewing
No,
hours-long data. It's just gonna be if something happened, then we'll know. Is that correct?
Exactly. It'll be recorded so we can back up the time frame and see who was there.
Figured, but I just wanted to be clear. Thank you.
On the motion by Councilor Falco, seconded by Councilor Dela Russo. All those in favor? Excuse me, roll call vote is requested, is required.
Councilor Dela Russo. Yes. Councilor Falco. Yes. Councilor Knight. Yes. Councilor Kern? Yes. Vice President Marks? Yes. Councilor Scarpelli? Yes. President Caviola?
Yes, 7 in the affirmative, none in the negative, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Bavuso. 17699, dear President Caraviallo and members of the City Council, I respectfully request that the council endorse an approval of food trucks for the Brooks PTO fundraiser that will be held at the Brooks Elementary School on October 22, 2017. Thank you for your consideration. Stephanie M. Burke-Mayor. Councilor Dela Russo.
Move approval.
On the motion by Councilor Marks, seconded by Councilor Dela Russo. All those in favor? Motion passes. Motion to revert back to regular business by Councilor Scarpelli, seconded by Councilor Falco. All those in favor? Motion passes. 17684, offered by Councilor Knight. Be it resolved that the Medford City Council requests that the administration expand upon its Adopt a Site program to include the grass islands extending from South Border Road to Lawrence Road. Councilor Knight.
Mr. President, thank you very much. As we've seen throughout the community, the Adopt a Site program has been very successful in certain locations. Along Lawrence Road and Governor's Ave, Mr. President, if you take a look, you will see that some of the islands are adopted and some aren't. So we have one island that looks great, another island that doesn't look so great, one island that looks great, another island that doesn't look so great. So there's a little bit of inconsistency there, Mr. President. We have a very successful framework in place, and I'm asking the administration to see if they can seek volunteers to go there and adopt that site, Mr. President, so that we can beautify the neighborhood a little bit more. There's some inconsistencies along that stretch of roadway, and I think that this will do a lot for curb appeal.
On the motion by Councilor Knight, seconded by Councilor Falco. All those in favor? Motion passes. 17685, offered by Vice President Marks. Be it resolved that the city administration provide the council with an update on the water leak detection program. Vice President Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is probably the third time I've offered this as a council resolution, that we receive an update on the proposal that was submitted by this administration back, I think it was roughly a year ago. Myself, and I know there were a couple other members of the City Council, attended a meeting up here that talked about purchasing a device on behalf of the community that would be able to gauge where leaks are coming from, and to have a systematic approach to replacing the water pipes where they're leaking in order to save the beleaguered ratepayers some money, Mr. President. So my first request is to ask where we stand on the leak detection program that was proposed to this council some time back. It's also, Mr. President, to once again ask that we take a full look at our infrastructure when it comes to water and sewer. Just for the edification of the viewing audience, the water for 2017 this year was assessed at $6,432,219. That is no increase over 2016. On the sewer side, for 2017, the assessment was $11,878,789. That was an increase of $525,541, which is a 4.6% increase over 2016 on the sewer side. And the combined assessment that the ratepayers in this community, every taxpayer is paying for, is water and sewer assessment is $18,311,008, and of which we also add in the expense of the Water and Sewer Division, which is $5,635,854, bringing the total budget for water and sewer for 2017 to $23,946,862. The reason why I bring this up tonight, Mr. President, as we all know, the MWRA back, I believe it was about a year ago, stated that Medford had approximately 20% for unaccounted for water in the community. And as part of unaccounted for water, that consists of leaks that are taking place, and that's why I'm calling for an update on the leak detection program. It also takes into consideration other usage in the community that's not metered right now, which are many of our hydrants throughout the community. And it also takes into consideration the unaccounted for water, the municipal and school side, Mr. President, which used to be part of their budget respectively. So the schools would pay for a water and sewer bill, depending on the water they used. And the last figure I received, and this is from 2017, I believe, the school side, based on a Tier 2 system, their water and sewer bill was $190,457. Now, we all know that that used to be part of the school department budget, and back some years ago, they took it out of the budget and stopped considering it an operating expense and just passed it off to the ratepayers on the water and sewer side as unaccounted for. But indeed, Mr. President, it's not unaccounted for. It is metered. We know where the water is coming from. And in my opinion, it sends out an awful message when we're talking about conservation and ways to better utilize our resources when you have a school department or a municipality that really doesn't pay for the water and sewer because they pass the burden on to the ratepayer. I think sends an awful message, Mr. President, and it should be accounted for under the accounting principles within a budget. So according to the MWRA, 20% of our water that we take in, 20% of that $6,432,219 is unaccounted for water. That's roughly $1,200,000 in unaccounted for water, of which about $393,000, almost $400,000 is from the municipal and the school side, and $800,000 of leaks that are happening under our roads, Mr. President. And things that we really need to have a leak detection program in order to cut that cost down and pass that savings on to the ratepayers. And so tonight, Mr. President, I ask that we, first of all, get an update on the leak detection program, where it stands right now. I once again ask, and I've asked half a dozen times, that water and sewer need to be included, Mr. President, in the operating budget of both the municipal and the school sides. That should happen without any say. That should be an automatic, Mr. President. If we're going to ask ratepayers to, depending on what tier they fall in, if they use less water, they can save on their bill and also conserve, we should also be demanding the same from the municipality and from the school side. That should be a given. So I would ask that it be included back into the operating expense for the water for the schools and for City Hall. As part of that $400,000 I alluded to, the schools was $190,000. The municipal buildings, about $43,000. Irrigation, which is probably 95% our parks, is $152,000. And then in our different fire stations throughout the community, a little over $6,000, Mr. President. So if you add that up, it comes to about $393,000, almost $400,000 in water and sewer consumption that we know where it's coming from, it's metered, and it should be part of an operating expense, Mr. President. So I'd put that in the form of a motion that we get a response back on those questions immediately on behalf of the ratepayers of this community, Mr. President, that are paying thousands of dollars in water or sewer a year. And if there's a way we can save money through I&I inflow in an account just for that purpose. The Water and Sewer Enterprise Account was created for that purpose, to offset rates. This is the state legislature that created it, not myself, not this council. To offset rates and to do infrastructure improvements. What better improvement, Mr. President, to tighten up a system that ratepayers are paying millions of dollars a year for unaccounted for water and for I&I, inflow and infiltration. What better use of that money? I don't know anyone that would stand up against that, Mr. President. Instead, that money is sitting in an account, just sitting there. And every day that goes by is an injustice to every resident in this community that's paying a water and sewer bill, as far as I'm concerned, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. On the motion by Vice President Marks, seconded by Councilor Longo Kern. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. 17686, offered by Councilor Longo Kern, be it resolved that once the free cash from last year is certified, that a portion of it be used to hire an outside company to help the Medford City Council update the city of Medford zoning laws. Councilor Longo Kern.
Thank you, President Carviello. I think this is something that we had asked for to be funded one way or another several months back. I believe there was one maybe subcommittee meeting on it, but I think it's something that needs to be done. I then asked a question of, can we work on our zoning one section at a time? I know we're the ones that would update the ordinances, but we were told in a written decision that that would be spot zoning. But we are going to be approached with a number of projects coming down the line, which almost seems similar to that. And I think it's something that we need to have a commitment by the administration to hire an outside company to help guide us through this process. I think we're all capable of going street by street and deciding what zoning changes we should make, but to handle this, which is going to take, from what I understand, multiple years to do. I know the city of Somerville, it took a couple years to get through the process. We need some guidance and we need some commitment by the administration so we can move forward and get this done. Hopefully it'll be something that, can be worked on once the funding is there at the beginning of the year by whoever may sit behind this rail. But it's a project that we've all spoken in favor of doing, and it's something that needs to be done. So I asked that a portion be set aside, whether she wants us to research different companies and the costs. I'm sure we are capable of doing that, but I think we need a commitment first that yes, the administration's willing to put money aside so that we're able to do this.
Councilor Scarpelli.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank my colleague for bringing this issue forward. I know that this has been one of the biggest questions as we go street to street and talking to residents and asking questions about our zoning laws and our ordinances. So I think that months back, when we first brought this issue up, one of the biggest concerns was the amount of money that a consultant would cost, and I think we need that consultant. I think it's time that we do that. But as neighboring communities have done, something that I've mentioned here in the past, they've used the Metropolitan Planning Council that kind of set an agenda that they could follow to look at our changing of zoning laws. So I'd like to call for a meeting with maybe possibly bring in the Metropolitan Planning Council, a subcommittee meeting or a committee of the whole meeting to bring that organization in to ask them for some guidance in what they've done with other communities that had similar issues that we have here in Medford, that some of our zoning and most of our zoning have been looked at in over 30 years. So I second my colleague's resolve, and I'd like to make an amendment to that, if she doesn't mind, that we call for a meeting with maybe a committee of the whole meeting relatively soon. I know it's been a very difficult time for scheduling, but maybe set something up with a consultant from the Metropolitan Planning Council and ask them for some guidance. We're already a member of the council, and it's free to us. So I think that might be an avenue that we could research and move forward with. So again, I thank council for bringing that forward.
Councilor Knight.
Mr. President, thank you very much. This certainly has been a topic that's been brought up before, and in previous times when the issue was brought up. I had a question, and the question was, What are we trying to accomplish? We want to review our zoning laws, but what is it that we want to try to accomplish? And that started a conversation, Mr. President, and the Subcommittee on Zoning and Ordinances has met a number of times, more than once, to discuss this very issue, Mr. President. And one of the things that we've been doing is trying to develop goals and develop criteria for further debate and discussion as to what we feel as though would be important to put Medford in a position to be successful as we grow. One of the items that we've been discussing was the ability to ensure that we continue to generate between 1.25 and 1.5% new growth annually. Another item that we've been looking upon, Mr. President, is the ability to expand upon commercially zoned parcels to ensure an equitable residential tax rate and an equitable shift of the residential tax burden to the commercial side. We've also discussed the possibilities that we have to meet and exceed the state-established thresholds for affordable housing, protecting the neighborhood's integrity and the historical assets in our community, as well as a few things that we're looking into with technical assistance from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, with the draft plan to revitalize Medford Square and soon-to-be work on the revitalization of Mystic Avenue, Mr. President. So there are a couple of items that are in the works here, and there's been a conversation that's been ongoing on this current topic, and I think it was the desire of the subcommittee to establish these criteria, to go through the whole entire process, and then to report the paper out to the council. And once we have that paper ready to further debate and deliberate, we can send it to the administration and say, these are the goals we want to accomplish. What's it going to cost to get it done? So that's where we are in the process, Mr. President. I thank the councilor for putting the measure forward. I think it's a good idea. We've done a lot of work on it, and we're going to continue to work on it, and we're going to continue to make this happen.
Thank you. Councilor Falco.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank Councilor Longo for bringing this forward. It's an important issue that impacts the quality of life of all residents throughout our city. Zoning is one of the biggest responsibilities we have here on the council. And zoning hasn't been looked at, and I think it's close to 50 years, and it needs to be looked at. And I did offer a paper on this earlier in the term with regard to having someone come in from the outside and take a look, and that paper did get moved to subcommittee where we have been looking at it and meeting on it. And but I do think it's important to continue the conversation to make sure that we keep it in the forefront. So I do support the resolution. I'm not sure as far as the next step, if we already have a resolution in subcommittee, what the next step would be. I mean, I do support the resolution. I think it needs to be looked at without a doubt. So I do support both resolutions fully.
Thank you. Vice President Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I first let me say I appreciate the role of the zoning subcommittee. They've done yeoman's work on this particular issue, and as Councilor Falco just alluded to, this is something that really has been ignored for a lot of years in this community, and in my opinion, it's going to merit to bring in a consultant that handles zoning on a day-to-day and can advise us on what our steps are as a community. The only thing I'd state, and I realize this is something that's in subcommittee, is I think this issue is much larger than just a paper before a subcommittee. I think this issue, Mr. President, impacts every walk of life in this community. And as we all know, zoning is the lifeline of a community. And I think it's important. While we saw in Cambridge the growth and expansion in Cambridge, we're witnessing it now in Somerville, which they probably don't have another piece of land to build on. We're experiencing it now in the city. We're going through it right now. And I think we have to react quicker than what we're doing. And it's no reflection on any one particular individual or any particular body in this community, but I think we really have to react, and I think it's prudent to bring in a consultant that will sit down with this council and tell us where we begin. It's great to get feedback, and that feedback can continue while this process happens. But to sit back and wait for recommendations at this point, the horse is already out of the barn. We're experiencing the growth right now. We're attending the ZBA meetings. We're hearing residents stand up and say, I don't want that particular development in my neighborhood based on the lack of parking, based on there's no setback, based on height, based on a number of things, Mr. President, that is concerning. When you look at other communities, they're incorporated right within their zoning ordinances, car share. I believe Cambridge and Somerville have a car share program. So when projects come in thickly settled areas in Cambridge, Somerville, and many other communities, it's part of their zoning that requires car share, which we refer to as the zip cars, Mr. President. You know, there's also solar share that's brought up, and many new initiatives now when it comes to residential and commercial building and so forth, also calls for a solar share as well as a car share. And there's a lot of initiatives that we could include within our zoning ordinances to help alleviate some of the concern that we're hearing, at least I'm hearing, from residents when I go to these meetings about the fact that these projects don't fit the very fabric of their neighborhood. And it's incumbent upon us. We have, I'd say, two major jobs. One, setting the city budget, or approving the city budget, and the second one is zoning, in my opinion. You know, they go hand in hand. And we'd be remiss if we sat back any longer while this city's going to go through a building boom and is experiencing right now single families turning into 3, 4, 5 units. It's happening throughout the community. You know, a lot that was built with a single family home, as we saw in the Lawrence Estates, turns into 2 giant homes. These are the concerns that I hear from residents, and we have to have a way as a council to say, you know what, we're not Cambridge, we're not Somerville. We want to make sure whatever happens in our community is something that we can all agree upon, and whatever new growth happens, whatever direction we go in, that it's going to be sensible for this community, and that people are going to rest assured that when they move to this community, they moved here for a reason, because of our open space, because of our schools, because of our parks, because of all the natural resources in this community. And I don't want to lose that very fabric that I think people move to this community for. So again, I support this wholeheartedly. I know it's been offered a number of times by other members of the council to bring someone on board, whether it's MPAC or whether it's any other organization or a private consultant. Really, that doesn't matter to me as long as we bring in an expert that can guide us along this very arduous process of really looking through hundreds and hundreds of pages of local zoning that hasn't been reviewed in decades.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Councilor Longo Kern.
I'll yield to the podium and
Name and address of the record, please.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Rodriguez. I live at 281 Park Street. I'm glad that we're talking about zoning, and I hope that we move past talking, but when we look for someone to bring in, we need to make sure that that group is independent and non-biased. We need to make sure that the zoning reforms that we make are Medford-centric and benefit Medford. Everyone talked about all the development that's happening in the city, but what I heard was residential, residential, residential. What's different between our development and Somerville and Cambridge's development is that they are very conscious of maintaining a balance of commercial and residential and making sure that they're able to support the infrastructure, the increased needs, the quality of life items that residents require and should have. So I think that's really important. We need to think about that as we move forward. I haven't spoke to one single resident that said, I really hope they sell the house next door to me and put up an apartment building. But we have people living in homes right now that are in apartment zones that very thing could happen. And if you've ever seen a resident who's heard that there's going to be a 12-unit building shading their home, it's very traumatizing. And there's nothing that we can do because of the way that the zoning is written. Right now, what's happening as we're waiting, this is already happening. Developers are coming, they're proposing what they want to do, they're going to the ZBA, they're getting multiple variances. And we see that when you have variances in commercial areas where you add residential, that it can cause problems adding commercial in later. We had a Dog for Days group that couldn't come in because they were abutting an apartment building. We had a meeting about the Wegmans, and there were resident concerns about loading dock hours because the residents were there. So I'm very cautious about what happens with Mystic Ave. Of course, the first proposal that came out was 500 units of apartments on Mystic Avenue, dead center of 9 parcels, which will impact our ability to develop commercially. And we need to stop being the city where developers believe that they can come in and make their own zoning because we haven't updated the zoning. So they're just going to change it and do what they want, and we're going to be left running behind. Thank you.
Name and address of the record, please.
Good evening, David McKillop, 94 Rock Glen Road. As far as the zoning goes, the only thing I would caution is that we actually have an understanding as to which direction we'd like to take the city, as opposed to the zoning advisors coming in and telling us which direction to go. The reason why I say that is because, as any situation, if it's driven by tax and tax base, then you're going to see a lot of conversation about high rises and higher up condominiums, when we're really trying to see what we can do about addressing the downtown areas and trying to keep the characters of those areas. And there are certain areas of the city, I'm sure, that can actually be developed like Mystic Ave, mixed use, whatever it is that we want to do. But we have to have an understanding as a city in itself before this advisor comes in, and we really should be able to tell them which direction we'd like the city to go and how do we get there, as opposed to them telling us we think this is the way the city should go and this is how it's going to increase your tax base and this is what it's going to do to the city. So that's the one big thing that I would caution everyone to, come together, figure out which direction the city should take and which direction it should go, with all the 5 downtowns, with all the areas that we feel we can develop, whether it should be strictly high-rise or it should be mixed use. I believe that we've got to address the middle class and what we can do about affordability and housing in the respect to that, not just low income as well. So those issues are something that we need to go to the table with, and making sure that we understand this is the direction we want Medford to go. How do we get there? Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Joyce Paul, 8 Mason Street. I was at the last city council meeting, and I went to the CPA meeting Wednesday, and Councilor Marks, had brought up 3 things that I thought were very basic, and he talked about the basics: the roads, the sidewalks, and getting a crossing, not guard, but a crossing thing that doesn't disappear in 6 months. And that's a very big basic. So when I went to the CPA meeting, I asked them, they say, well, we can't do this and that. And I said, I understand that you can't do this and you can't do that. But if there's any way you could do any of the basic things that we need, it makes more sense than coming up with something that maybe we don't really need, or at least we don't need before the basics. So whether they will do it or not, I don't know. But I did bring it up. And as far as the housing, and I'm very, very concerned about the housing, a few years ago I tried to help someone get senior housing, and it was impossible. And I talked to the person who was the head of senior housing, and they had gotten about a 4-unit housing for grandparents who had custody of their children because the children were sick. There was a woman, and she had multiple sclerosis, and she gave custody to her mother and father. And I read, there was an article in the Globe about the fact that because of the opioid crisis, there are so many more grandparents having custody of their children. And I thought, we have to do something for housing. We could do that, and it would be a small development, and it would be something that we would need, and it wouldn't bring in all the problems that, that would be. So I brought some of the, unfortunately, I can't go Saturday, but I hope you will go Saturday, or at least get out there your opinion that we need the basics, and we need limited housing, but maybe housing for seniors. So I'm going to leave some of these over there, and if you don't go Saturday, maybe you could fill one of these out and, drop it off all sorts. Thank you very much. You guys are really good. I don't know how you can stand listening to all of us all the time.
Thank you. Name and address for the record, please.
Castanetti, Cushing Street, Medford, Massachusetts. Speak back to the Mystic Ave zoning. I'd like to add some input. I lived on Mystic Ave in 1955. That was the old highway to Boston before they built Route 93 in 1960, I believe. And in about 1965, I come up with an idea, although I didn't have much in numbers of age or power. The city, in my opinion, should have taken all of Mystic Ave on the east side, by eminent domain at that time, when we had the muscle and it was more affordable, even with a dirty 21E at the junkyard, presumably. And then I'd have the developers go up whatever, 25, 35 stories high. And if you worked here, you'd be at work now. Marshall Sloan took the idea 10 years ago with his billboard. However, that never happened, and Mr. Gav is underutilized, and it would be a gold mine if it was New York City, or even if it was 5 miles north of Boston, which it is. However, first of all, this new growth real estate tax, to grow is wonderful, because without growth, we start to go backwards. However, when the new growth, when you don't use the new real estate taxes to offset Prop 2.5 increases, it doesn't help us who've been carrying the weight and paying real estate taxes for all these decades. It actually hurts us infinitely, because we need more police, more fire, school, buildings, pensions, infrastructure. And then, in the following year, they add 2.5% to a larger inflated number. And I would have put a ring road on Mr. Gav, keep him off Main Street, unless they wanted to go to Deeper Squallies in those days. Now, good luck with this new zoning, because it should have been done a long, long time ago. But I must reiterate, the new growth does not help us. It hurts us infinitely. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Cassidy. Councilor Longo Kern.
Thank you, President Carviello. I want to thank the speakers, and I know there are a few of many that are interested in this topic in the city, with all the development that has gone on and will continue to go on. I think part of why I asked for a development committee and task forces is so that we can get more community input. But I think Mr. McKillop had a good point, and that is that the 7 of us need to sit down, and I agree with, maybe that's a place to start, but we need to do it sooner rather than later with regards to meeting with the Metropolitan Planning Council, and then maybe they can guide us on which company that needs to be hired and the pricing that it will cost. But it needs to be the 7 of us, and it needs to happen much sooner than it has. I thank the subcommittee for doing the work they've done so far, but I think now it's the 7 of us and the committee of the whole that need to take the ball by the horns and get this process started, because time cannot tick away on such an important issue, and it is the 7 of us that hear from residents on a daily basis, whether they're for development, against development, for certain amount of units versus more commercial. I mean, we know what we want, and I think we can have no problem tell the Metropolitan Planning Council where we want to go and how we want to get it done. We just need some guidance, and we need to start the process sooner than later.
Thank you. On the motion by Councilor Longo Kern, seconded by Councilor Della Russo. All those in favor?
Aye. Plus the amendment.
As amended by Councilor Scarpelli. With the master,
In committee of the whole.
As amended by Councilor Scarpelli. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. 17687, offered by Councilor Knight. Be it resolved that the DPW report back to the council when the replacement of asphalt concrete panels will be performed, and be it further resolved, an inventory of asphalt street panels be forwarded to the council, including the address, where it's located, and the date the concrete was initially removed. Councilor Knight.
Mr. President, thank you very much. There are a number of areas throughout the community that have had asphalt patchwork performed on cracking sidewalks, concrete sidewalks that have been removed. And the theory behind it would be that we put a temporary patch down of asphalt sidewalk, and then when we have enough locations in the community that are in a certain area or region, we call the concrete truck up, and we get the concrete truck out there, and we break down these asphalt sidewalk patches, and we put concrete patches down, Mr. President. And I think that enough time has passed now, but we do have enough locations across the city of Medford that could require 1, 2, maybe 10 concrete trucks to get out there and start pouring concrete sidewalks, Mr. President. We look at the Regency and the Regal condominium buildings right on Winthrop Street. For 2.5 years, they sat there and they had a gigantic drainage project performed right beside their house. Their sidewalk was taken down, replaced with an asphalt sidewalk. 2 years have gone by. The concrete sidewalk has not been replaced. You go up to Ashcroft Road, Mr. President, and you'll see in front of 129 a tree being removed, the stump being ground down, the sidewalk being replaced with asphalt. With asphalt and concrete still hasn't happened. 2 years have gone by. So I think it's time, Mr. President, that we make a focus on this really basic city service and this real quality of life issue. It's a curb appeal issue. When you look out the window of your vehicle when you're driving down the street, we like to see concrete sidewalks, not a patchwork of concrete and asphalt, Mr. President. So I'm asking the DPW to report back to the council the following information. That is when the replacement of the asphalt concrete panels will be performed, and an inventory of those street panels, as well as when the concrete was initially removed, so that we have a better idea as to how long this has been going on. And we can get a better understanding, Mr. President, as to how many street panels it takes before we call a concrete truck out. So with that being said, I move for approval of the resolution.
Councilor Del Russo.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm glad this issue was brought up. I've been contacted and stopped by a number of residents regarding this very issue. Mr. President, we only have a couple weeks before concrete pouring has to stop, so let's pour, pour, pour.
Thank you. Name and address for the record, please.
Ray Scaffo, 9 Sunset Ave. I want to thank Councilor Knight for bringing this forward. This morning I had shown a picture to the council president about 39 Sunset Ave. It's approximately about 50 feet of frontage, and the whole sidewalk's been taken up. It's going on 4 months now. They totally framed it in, and they haven't come back to pour the cement. There's also a couple of panels on the other side of the street that haven't been done as well. It's a walk through to Tufts University, up towards College Ave. A lot of people use that route. The problem is they could walk out in the street, but they have about 10 yards of gravel at the end of the street that butt up against the sidewalk as well. The people in the area are they're concerned because now we're getting, like Councilor Del Russo says, we only got a couple of weeks left before we can stop pouring cement. So they're concerned about, people going to get hurt walking through. Right now, it's a danger because a lot of leaves now are inside that pit. Their pipes are sticking up where shutoffs for water, gas, or whatever on that sidewalk. So people can't see, and if they start to walk in through the pit, somebody's going to trip and fall. The homeowner at 39 has called numerous times to City Hall, and I think there was a contractor involved, and has totally either disappeared or whatever. So I would strongly recommend that the council send a letter to whomever to get this taken care of.
I did bring that to the attention to Mr. Cairns this morning.
Right.
And hopefully he'll have an answer for me by tomorrow morning.
And I appreciate it because the people, the homeowners on the street are getting up in arms, and they're ready to come up here full tilt. So if you can get back to me as soon as possible, I'll stop the rush.
Councilor Falco.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank Councilor Knight for bringing this forward. This is an important public safety issue, especially if you don't have sidewalks. You're forcing people into the street, and you're forcing kids into the street, and sometimes that becomes an issue. Over the last 2 weeks, this has come up as an issue where we've had sidewalks that need to be replaced, and we've asked for lists the last few weeks, and a list should take literally a few minutes to produce. You just have to print it out. So if you could, please, if we could just amend it to get an updated list with regard to the sidewalks that need to be replaced, and how many have been replaced so far, and how many stumps have been removed. I mean, this is stuff that we have requested. I know the last 3 meetings now we've requested this, and we still have no information. So if we could please just add that amendment to the resolution.
Thank you, Councilor Falco.
Thank you.
And it was this council who was asked several times for the city to put on a cement crew. That should be working 9 months a year, because we certainly have enough sidewalks to keep a cement crew busy all the time. On the motion by Councilor Knight, seconded by Councilor Longo-Kern.
Thank you. Just to be clear, Council Falco, what are you looking for a time frame on those lists from when we appropriated that large portion of money? Yeah. Oh, his microphone. I just want to make sure we're clear so we get exactly what we want.
Thank you. We appropriated money, I believe, in the spring for this, and quite a bit
Yes.
of money. So if we could just basically find out, I'd like to see what progress they've made from the list that we were given in the spring. What progress they've made to date. Because there were quite a few sidewalks and stumps that needed to be removed, and sidewalk panels that needed to be replaced, and asphalt sidewalks that, some parts of the city actually have asphalt sidewalks, so those needed to be replaced as well. And it'd be good to see what kind of progress they've made, how much money they've spent so far, how much is remaining. You know, like we said earlier, I mean, the season is, you know, dwindling away to pour concrete. So I'd really like to see, get an update as to what his, you know, what their progress has been so far.
Councilor Knight.
Mr. President, I certainly have no problem with the paper being amended. However, I'd ask that it be placed forward in the form of a B paper. I want a complete inventory of all the asphalt street panels in the city. My concern isn't whether or not the funds that we appropriated earlier in the year, I believe it was $300,000 to take down some stumps and replace some sidewalks that were damaged during water service work, if I'm not mistaken. We're done. So I just want to keep them separate, Mr. President. I certainly support Councilor Falco's amendments to the paper. I just would like to see them in a B paper so that the administration doesn't confuse the two issues and only give us one report.
Vice President Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. This council has called for an audit of our streets and our sidewalks for the past several years. To date, we have received no correspondence from the city administration regarding either. You know, we talk about this, and we've been talking about it for years, this sidewalk list, like it's some secretive list that's in a vault somewhere that no one can view, but it's out there, and residents aren't sure if they're on the sidewalk list. They've been told they are. Mr. President, why can't we have a list that's on the city website, that's updated, that shows you what's being worked on, the progress? Why does it have to be this secretive list that we have to beg for to get a copy to see if things are actually working in this community? There's no transparency at all. And this has been the way, and actually in the past, Mr. President, I've actually voted against requests because I've asked, you know, DPW directors, can you show us what you want to spend this money on? How many sidewalks? How many stumps? And we couldn't get any answers. And today we're still continuing with the same format where, you know, you'll have a resident that calls you up and says, I've been told by City Hall I'm on the list. And I'll tell them, well, there's multiple lists. I don't know what list you're on, but you may or may not be on a list. It's just too confusing for residents. It's confusing for this council. I would ask, and if you want to do a C paper or D paper, that this be put on the city website so a resident can go on, Mr. President, and look and say, yes, 32 High Street is on the list. Yes, it was called in on February 2nd. They plan on getting it to October 3rd, and, you know, this is the status. It was closed out. It seems to me a simple request to track, and by leaving it open-ended, no one knows in this community what's going on. No one knows if their sidewalk's going to get done. They don't really know if they're on the list or not. And, you know, until we do a complete audit, I have a couple of things on the resolution for this afternoon, and I know Councilor Falco does also. Mr. President, I was on Bowen Ave to see one particular sidewalk, and honestly, an hour later, I viewed 25 different sidewalks because residents kept on coming out and said, hey, look at this sidewalk. Hey, look, I'm supposed to be on the list. Hey, look, they dug this up 5 months ago. They never came back. All they put was orange cones out here. And literally, that's a microcosm, that one street, on what's happening in this community. It's on every street, Mr. President. And until we do a complete audit and come out with one list that's publicized on the city website or on local cable or wherever you want to put it, we're never going to get a handle on this issue. We're never going to get a handle, Mr. President. Thank you.
Do you want to make that in the motion of a C paper, Councilor Marks?
If he wants to make it a C paper or part of his paper,
For the purchase of clarity, we'll make that a C paper. Thank you. Name and address to the record, please.
Ray Scaffo, 9 Sunset Ave. There's so many out there. I mean, I drive the city every day because my business is in the city. And
between the stumps and the sidewalks and the streets and everything. The problem is that we only have 5 DPW highway department workers. Can't expect them to do everything. You got contractors out there, they come, they go, they disappear, whatever the situation may be. It's time to start to think about hiring some more DPW workers so we can have multiple crews out there doing different things, which will be stumps, sidewalks, potholes, whatever needs to be done. If you have multiple crews doing different things, this will start to move forward and we'll start to get a lot of this cleaned up.
Thank you. Name and address for the record, please.
David McKillop, 94 Rock Glen Road. I didn't get a chance to say it before, but it's nice to see your house is all done over.
Very nice.
It's very good.
Glad to be home.
You guys are glad. I'm sure you are. It's the city's house. As far as the sidewalks, I too have experienced several areas where people are just truly completely frustrated and fed up with the whole process of why they can't get anything completed in this city. My fear right now is the ADA compliance on some of these sidewalks is horrific. It's dangerous. I've seen wheelchairs literally go out on the street because they cannot pass on the sidewalks, on some of the sidewalks that we have. And the elderly, and the darkness at night. When a sidewalk is raised 6 to 8 inches above where it normally should be and someone is walking down the street and it's dark, you can't see. So first things first, there is a company out there, and I can find the name of the company, that will actually come in an emergency situation and shave down the sidewalk. So at the very least, until these things are fixed, we can shave the issues that we have so they'll be less likely to trip over them. So let's take some sort of action. Even if it's just something that's temporary, and letting the people know that, show us where the worst situation is, and we can solve that for you by at least shaving the sidewalks down so no one can trip. So let's start there. Then secondly, this Complete Streets project kind of really should change the name, because in my eyes, it's not very complete if we can't add the issues that we currently have in the city to the situation of, you know, the corners of every square and some of the sidewalks and some of the ADA. If we're making the entrances onto the sidewalks ADA compliant, we should make the sidewalks ADA compliant. Enough is enough. We've got to fix this.
Thank you. Name and address for the record, please.
George Sacco, 21 Ridgeway Road, Medford. I'm going to pick up what Councilor Marks was talking about. Right now, we do a budget on a yearly basis on street repairs, sidewalk repairs. X amount of money is allocated. Just a little story. I was in my backyard with my grandchildren and my daughter-in-law and my son, and my daughter-in-law happened to be on her little iPhone, and she said, "Hey, Brian, I just got a text from the city of Salem, New Hampshire." And my son said, "Well, what's it about?" "Gee whiz, they're going to do our street, Complete Street, in 2020. And here I am thinking, Medford, 58,000 people. We do it on a yearly basis. Salem, New Hampshire, they do it on a 3-year basis. So what they do is they go out, they prorate, they go out 3 years. We know, the engineering department, they know 3 years out what street has to be done. They know 3 years out what sidewalks have to be done. Now, going out 3 years, you look down the road and you say, okay, we'll take my street, my old street, Sherwood Road. We're going to do Sherwood Road in 2020. The utilities know they're going to do it in 2020. The water department knows they're going to do it in 2020. They plan, okay, we've got to put water pipes in, we've got to put hydrants in. So that's all planned ahead. Estimated costs can be planned ahead, even though it's not budgeted, but it can be all planned ahead. So maybe we ought to look at a 3-year plan. Go out 3 years, we do a yearly budget, 2017, we move it out to 2021. Just keep moving it that way. And this way here, the residents know, you publish it on the internet, you publish it in the local newspaper, so the people know 3 years from now that they have a shot at having their street done. So that's just a suggestion. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. On the motion by Councilor Knight on the seat paper offered by Councilor Marks. Seconded by Councilor Knight. All those in favor? Councilor Marks? Aye? Oh, just want to make out the chair was in doubt. It's not a roll call. Motion passes. On the B paper, offered by Councilor Falco, seconded by Councilor Knight. All those in favor? Aye. On the original paper, offered by Councilor Knight, seconded by Councilor Dela Russo. All those in favor? Motion passes. 17-688, offered by Councilor Longo Kern. Be it resolved that the administration give a written update with regards to the Riverside Plaza project, including a detailed breakdown of how the monies have been spent thus far and what remains to be funded. Councilor Longo Kern.
Thank you, President Carviello. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Looking for a breakdown from Office of Community Development on what monies have been expended thus far, and how much more we have to go. I know there was somewhat of an update that we had to read about in the transcript, but if the council can be given a detailed breakdown, that would be much appreciated, because it sparked follow-up calls from residents to us of why is this project potentially going over, and we really weren't notified. I had to learn about it in the paper.
Thank you. Councilor Knight.
Move approval, Mr. President.
On the motion by Councilor Longo Kern, seconded by Councilor Knight. All those in favor? Motion passes. 17-689, offered by Vice President Marks. Be it resolved that the sidewalk in front of 29 Lawrence Road be repaired in the interest of public safety. Vice President Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. This sidewalk requires attention by the city, and I would ask that it be reviewed and replaced in the interest of public safety.
On the motion by Councilor Marks, seconded by Councilor Knight. All those in favor? Motion passes. 17-690, offered by Councilor Knight. Be it resolved that the Medford City Council requests that the sidewalk panel on the corner of Governors Avenue and Sherwood Avenue be repaired. Councilor Knight.
Mr. President, yes, very similar to the situation that Councilor Marks just spoke of. This sidewalk panel on the corner of Sherwood Road and Governors Avenue is broken down, and it was replaced with gravel. And the gravel remains. There's no smooth surface there. As leaves fall, it becomes a trip hazard. Move for approval, Mr. President. Hopefully the DPW can get to this before long.
On the motion by Councilor Knight, seconded by Councilor Dela Russo. All those in favor? Motion passes. 17-691, offered by Councilor Falco. Be it resolved that the Medford City Council congratulate Duncan McLean from the Boy Scouts, Troop 416, on earning the rank of Eagle Scout. Councilor Falco.
Thank.
Okay, I'm sorry. Along with Councilor Marks. Councilor Falco. 17-692, offered by Vice President Marks. Be it resolved that the Medford City Council recognize Duncan Bruce McLean for obtaining his Eagle Scout badge, and be it further resolved that Duncan Bruce McLean appear before the City Council on a council commendation. Councilor Falco.
Thank you, Mr. President. We just want to congratulate Duncan McLean for this significant achievement. He became recently, well, actually, this week he'll be officially becoming Eagle Scout. It's really remarkable to go through the whole process and to earn that rank. I believe the statistic, there's only 4% of young men that actually get to that point where they go all the way through the program and become an Eagle Scout.
Yes.
It's really a remarkable achievement. He's a great kid. He's in college now, and his service project was to basically, I believe it was improving the landscaping down at the Otis Street Church, and actually did a lot of structural work to prevent the foundation from flooding as well. And he did a great job. I went down there and visited him during the project. And unfortunately that day it was pouring out, it was raining, but really he and his fellow troop worked through it and really did a great job of really upgrading the grounds, and they did a nice job with the foundation work as well. So I just wanted to congratulate him on this achievement, and of course, if we could have him come down to receive a council condemnation, that'd be great. Thanks.
Outstanding young man. Vice President Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. As Councilor Falco just alluded to, you know, I don't know what it is in the water in the city of Medford here, but we are turning out Eagle Scouts at a real great rate in this community. The Otis Street Church needs to be commended because a lot of the Eagle Scouts are coming from that particular pack. And Duncan has done yeoman's work, as John just alluded to, about doing some landscaping and foundation work around the church itself as a community project. Last Saturday, Mr. President, I had the opportunity to go around with another young gentleman, John Fee, in this community, who was going for his Eagle Scout badge. And his community project was to have made up hydrant markers, 100 hydrant markers that he personally installed with his other Cub Scouts. He went around and he went to the vocational school and had them made up. They painted them, they installed them, and it's a real good community service project. And, you know, in this day and age with all that's going on, it's nice to hear the positive stories that are happening, in particular with young people in our community that are getting involved and seeing the importance of community building and helping the community. So I want to congratulate Duncan, and I hope John Fee, with his project, moves forward, and we'll be seeing him shortly too, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. And if we can get them up here soon to get a citation, and congratulations to the council, will be greatly appreciated. On the motion by Councilor Marks and Councilor Falco, all those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. 17-693, offered by Councilor Knight, be it resolved that the Medford City Council wish Rose DeLuca a happy and healthy 90th birthday. Councilor Knight.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Rose, happy birthday. I'd like my council colleagues to join me in wishing Mr. Luker a happy birthday. 90 is a milestone, Mr. President, and I wish her another 90 happy and healthy years.
Thank you. On the motion by Councilor Knight, seconded by Councilor Longo-Kern, all those in favor? Motion passes. 17-697, offered by Councilor Falco, whereas the city of Medford has recently removed many of the outdated fire call boxes located throughout the city, be it resolved that the city of Medford Electrical Department remove the remaining base of the firebox that still remains in front of 201 Main Street in the interest of public safety. Councilor Falco.
Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, it's 201 Salem Street.
201
It's
Salem
right
Street.
in front of Brookline Bank on Salem Street. I got a number of calls on this, and sometimes if I get off the bus when I'm coming out of town on Salem Street, you know, actually the bus drops you off. It's right there on the ground. It's actually where the old fire call box used to be. They took the call boxes out, but there's like a small pipe that's sticking up, and there was some wires that were in the pipe that have been cut. But it's definitely a trip hazard to anybody that's walking through there, and that is a highly traversed area with people catching the bus and just walking to and from school, and it's right near a crosswalk. So if we could have the electrical department or the DPW department, whoever's
That's Mr. Randazzo.
Exactly. If we could have him come down, or maybe with the assistance of the DPW department, just have him come down and remove that. It's definitely a safety hazard, and it needs to be taken care of right away. Thank you.
Thank you. On the motion by Councilor Falco, seconded by Councilor Scarpelli, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. 17-698, offered by Councilors Falco and Scarpelli, whereas there are a number of blind intersections located on Fulton Street, be it resolved that the city of Medford install mirrors at the following intersections in the interest of public safety: Fulton Street and Ridgeway Road, Fulton Street and Wasson Street. Councilor Knight. Excuse me, Councilor Falco.
Thank you, Mr. President. Received a lot of phone calls on this as well, and I know my colleague has as well. Up in the Heights, there are a couple of intersections, and this actually came up at the police community meeting as well, where if you're going from Fulton Street, or actually if you're coming from Wasson, coming from Highland Ave, and you want to take the left or right onto Fulton Street, it's a blind intersection. I mean, you kind of have to guess if there's any cars coming. Same thing with Ridgeway Road. You know, so I think a mirror on the telephone pole that actually would help indicate whether or not cars are coming from the other direction would be beneficial, you know, from a safety perspective. So if we could we could actually have, actually probably, if we could move this paper to the Traffic Commission for approval, and if we could actually have those mirrors installed, that would be, I think, great in the interest of public safety. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Councilor Knight.
Council Scarpelli's paper as well?
Your button was on next.
All right, well, he's a sponsor.
Councilor Scarpelli.
Shame, Rick. Thank you. Again, thank you, Council Falco and I both were, I think we're all in attendance at the St. Francis traffic meeting, and one of the things that we talked about were the mirrors, and I believe Chief Sacco said that those wouldn't be an issue, and it would be very helpful for those neighbors. So I think that with the residents that asked, and we brought it forward, and it seemed like it was pretty positive. So if we can get that update and get those installed as soon as possible, it would be greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Scarpelli. Councilor Knight.
Mr. President, thank you very much, and thank you to the sponsors of this resolution. I'd like to amend with a B paper as well, Mr. President. If you're traveling northbound on Main Street, and you go underneath the highway, past South Street, underneath the highway, and you go to take a left-hand turn onto Route 16, with the renovations that they've made to the Craddock Bridge and the relocation from the construction on the left side of the street to the right side of the street, right now it's very difficult when you're taking a left-hand turn onto Route 16 to see one whole lane of traffic. So I'm asking the engineering department if they'd be willing to take an inspection of the site and make recommendations to improve safety at the location, Mr. President.
Councilor Del Russo.
Back to the main paper, Mr. President. I just wanted to chime in on what Councilor Scarpelli said, was that a number of locations were mentioned by citizens for up there, and I just want to urge the chief, who, as Councilor Scarpelli mentioned, was amenable to these types of improvements, to move on them quickly and to expand the scope. I think there were 3 or 4 spots that had been mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, where these would be most helpful. Yeah.
Temporary speed bumps.
All of this, just let's get, it was serious enough for a significant neighborhood meeting. And the people in there were very patient with us. It was a hot summer night, and a lot of headway was made, and a lot of really thoughtful input was there. There was a lot of people who offered really solid stuff and really solid assessments of what's going on there. And I just hope that we're able to implement some of these recommendations, have them hashed out in the Traffic Commission, and moved on, just to give these people some relief. It's a major regional issue there. They're seeing it acutely. They shouldn't have to live under this type of disturbance. So the slightest thing we can do to help them, I would recommend.
Thank you. Councilor, Vice President Marks.
And just if we can add resident only, I know that was brought up several times at the meeting too, and some of the roads up there, residents were looking at resident only because of the severe cut-through traffic.
Thank you. Name and address for the record, please.
George Sacco, 21 Ridgeway Road. I've been on Ridgeway Road for 16 years, and I have to thank Councilor Scarpelli, Councilor Falco for bringing this up tonight. I'm going to let my neighbors know that maybe we're going to get a mirror there. It's so dangerous. I mean, I know there's other blind spots in Medford, but Ridgeway Road is so dangerous. It's almost like suicide. When you come up Ridgeway Road, you don't even want to try to take a left-hand turn on Ridgeway Road, because number one, the traffic is unbelievable, but number two, the speed. They come down, even though the stop sign is at the Fulton Spring Road intersection, they come down that street 40, 45 miles an hour. It's amazing no one's been killed, okay? But you're right about the other areas having mirrors. Ridgeway Road, Council Box, residents only. We do have a no right turn on that street. There's 2 of them, no right turn. And what I've been finding out is that a lot of the traffic that's coming out of the Heights is not Medford, North Medford residents. what we're seeing is, we're seeing a tremendous amount of traffic coming in from Malden, Melrose. They're even coming off 93, go by the Stoneham Zoo, and they come down, Elm Street's backed up, they come right around the Rotary, come down Fulton Street. So what you're seeing is a tremendous amount of traffic. The only street off of Fulton Street to get onto 93, other than the Fellsway, is Ridgeway Road. I've counted 80, 90 cars in an hour, and some mornings, having a cup of coffee, just watching them coming down. Police enforcement just doesn't exist up there. Okay, so I think in the long run, if we can at least get a mirror there, the people on Ridgeway Road, at least we can see, see that traffic coming down. And most importantly, these people coming down Fulton Street, they're gonna be able to see Ridgeway Road. And that's critical because they come around, when they come off Fulton Street, they swing on the other side of Ridgeway Road. And I've seen cars hit head-on since I've been there. Thank God no one's been killed, but, so that's, that's another issue. So, thank you. Thank you. I was at that meeting, and it was very constructive, so hopefully we'll see a mirror on the pole. Again, thanks.
Thank you.
I appreciate the time.
Name and address of the record, please.
Ray Scarfo, 9 Sunset Ave. As Councilor Knight stated, taking a left onto Main Street onto Route 16, it's very dangerous. Other than, especially if there are no police officers there once the site gets closed down for the evening, they should put up barriers so that you can't take a left-hand turn, because somebody's gonna get hurt there if that is opened up. Traffic coming the other way, it's very difficult to see the person taking a left-hand turn there. So let them go through the center and come around and take a right to get onto Route 16. So whatever you guys can do to make that happen, I would appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilor Scarpelli.
One last thing, I know that, thank you, Mr. President, but Council Falco's hard work and the new traffic engineer that will be coming in, I think that was one of the, so the residents know that one of the first priorities that they talked about is the Fulton Heights and what's happening there as a major cut-through for 93. So it hasn't been forgotten. I think that's one of the things that residents have been stopping me and Council Falco about, that we live in the neighborhood, that it's, where have we gone since that meeting? So it's still a hot topic, and we won't let it die across the community. So thank you.
Thank you. On the motion by Councilors Falco and Scarpelli, seconded by Councilor Dela Russo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. With the B paper. Motion by Councilor Scarpelli to take papers in the hands of the clerk.
We have 2 under suspension. Under suspension.
And under suspension. Seconded by Councilor Dela Russo. All those in favor? 17,700, offered by Councilor Knight, be it resolved that the tree stump in front of 34th Toro Avenue be removed. Councilor Knight.
Again, Mr. President, a basic service request. I was out knocking on doors yesterday, and I came up to 34 Toro Ave. In front of this residence was a very large tree stump, probably 3 to 4 feet in diameter. The tree has been gone for an extended period of time, and the residents expressed some frustration that the tree has not been removed yet. So with that being said, I told them that I'd do my best to get it removed. I placed the matter on the agenda, and I hope that our administration will take the appropriate steps to do such.
On the motion by Councilor Knight, seconded by Councilor Falco. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. 17,701, offered by Councilor Longo Kern. Be it resolved that the Medford City Council congratulate Medford resident Henry Millerin for receiving the MPAH 2017 Patriot Award in recognition of his leadership and contribution to the Haitian community in Massachusetts. Councilor Longo Kern.
Thank you, President Carviello. I was able to read an article and find out that Henry Millerin is receiving this Patriot Award, and I think it's such an honor. Henry is a friend to many of us, and he does a tremendous amount of work in the disability community, but also in the Haitian community, and he's being recognized for it. And I'm obviously very proud. They're going to have a ceremony for him at the end of the month, and I think it's something that I wanted to bring up just to let him know we appreciate all his hard work and effort for what he does for a tremendous amount of people.
If you'd like to invite him up here for a citation by the council.
Yes, please.
Be appreciated. Council Scarpelli.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I thank my colleague, Brianna Longo-Kern, for bringing this forward. I think that I had a problem about 3 months ago with a resident, a Haitian resident, that young teenager that was having some issues with a passport to get to his grandmother's funeral in Haiti. And all I had to do was make one phone call to Henry, and the consulate called this young man back and made sure he could be back home with his family to rest his grandmother at peace. And these are just little things that Henry does. So I too, he's a great man, and recognition well deserved. Thank you.
Vice President Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too just would like to thank Council Longo for bringing this recognition. Henry's been a long-established member of this community, and as Councilor Scarpelli so eloquently said, will be the first to step forward in order to help someone that's in need. And I too want to thank him for all his efforts on behalf of all Medford residents in this community.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Councilor Knight.
Mr. President, thank you very much, and I think my colleagues have hit the nail on the head. Mr. Millerman's work in the community is not just limited to that at the MPAHA. He's also been a strong advocate for the disabled in our community, and he's also been a strong advocate for his neighbors, and he's been a strong member of the Democratic Party, chairing our Ward 6 City Committee. So with that being said, thank you, Henry, for your service and your work, and congratulations.
Councilor Falco.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also just wanted to take a second to congratulate Henry. He's a big part of our community. He's always there when you need him. He's helping organize the Ward 6 candidates night. So he's always active. He's always there when you need him. He's a great guy. And so congratulations to Henry.
And again, there's not a week that goes by that I don't talk to Henry. Again, he's a good man and good leader of this community. And we're glad. I'd like to have him come down for a citation the next few weeks. On the motion by Councilor Longo-Kern, seconded by?
Second.
By Councilor Dela Russo and Councilor Scarpelli. All those in favor? Motion passes. Offered by Councilor Falco, be it resolved that the Medford City Council requests that the tree warden examine the tree in front of St. Francis Parish Center in the interest of public safety. Councilor Falco.
Thank you, Mr. President. I actually received a call from a resident the other day, and I actually took a walk down there to check it out myself. There's a tree, a rather large tree in front of St. Francis Parish Center. And I'm not sure if there was a car accident there recently, but it looks like it is just hollowed out completely, and it's a really large tree. And I'm really concerned that this thing is about to tip, but if we could send, I know the tree is on the Fells Way, but if we could send out our tree warden just to take a look to see what exactly route should be taken as far as if the tree is, if it's still viable, I guess. I mean, the tree looks like it's about to go, and I really have a major concern that it's going to fall into the road. It's large, and it literally it looks like it's hollow. So if we could have tree warden go out there as soon as possible to take a look into this, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Dela Russo.
Mr. President, I feel that I should inform the body that that tree no longer exists. It's gone. When I made the bend around to be on time for a 10 o'clock funeral mass at St. Francis this morning, the tree was being taken down right before our eyes, shredded into a million pieces and thrown into a truck and driven away.
Thank you.
Excellent work, Councilor.
Thank you very much. When I left early this morning, it was still there, so I'm glad they took care of it right away.
They knew this was coming.
Thank you.
Vice President Marks. Vice President Marks.
I'm glad to hear it was done, Mr. President. I received the same call, and I'm glad to hear that tree was definitely a public safety concern. I'm glad to hear it's been removed.
On the motion by Councilor Falco, seconded by Councilor Scarpelli. All those in favor? Motion passes. I'm sorry. I apologize. Name and address to the record, please.
Joe Villone, 59 Garfield Ave. This is Tree City, one of the Tree City Americas. There's a lot of them. But City Hall has bragging rights again this year in Tree City. And what I'm concerned about is people know that last year I saved a tree that wasn't supposed to be taken down. So thank you, Councilor Falco. If that one was hollowed out, we don't want to have problems. When I first moved here, the tree in front of my house was rotting and the wires came down. That was 2003, 2004. So there was a tree hearing, and I went to it, and on Paris Street, there's a beautiful tree. Now, this tree is healthy. The street is a mess. So there's a petition to take the tree down. My concern with it is the street itself is a mess and is a big hazard, a bigger hazard than any tree. You can pave around the trees. You can put a handicap access.
Point of information, Councilor Scarpelli.
It's up to, at the podium. Paris Street, I talked to the city engineer today. It's ready for some work and repaving, so pretty excited about that.
That's great to hear, Councilor Scarpelli. That is great to hear because the streets around there have been hazardous. And I would like to see, if we're Tree City USA, I just want to see the good, healthy trees. If the roots are coming up, we need to pave around them, build a nice way to keep the tree preserved because it's the tallest tree on Paris Street. But it is great to see that Medford cares about trees. I want to see that we protect the good ones. Thank you.
On the motion by Councilor Falco, seconded by Councilor Scarpelli. All those in favor? Motion passes. Offered by Vice President Marks, be it resolved that the street be repaired at 496 Winthrop Street in the interest of public safety. Vice President Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know Councilor Knight brought up this issue last week, but I received an email from a resident that lives at 496 Winthrop Street that stated that the street in front of his home is in deplorable condition. He also referred to the corner of Wildwood and Winthrop. I know Councilor Knight brought that up last week, and I would ask that because of the utility excavation that's going on there, that area be looked at immediately, Mr. President, in the interest of public safety.
Thank you. On the motion by Councilor Marks, seconded by Councilor Falco. All in favor? Motion passes. Offered by Vice President Marks, be it resolved that the missing cement sidewalk from 63 Bowen Avenue be replaced. Vice President Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the sidewalk I referred to earlier. They removed a tree and just left the vacant hole there for some time now, and this definitely needs to be re-cemented in the interest of public safety. It's a very hazardous trip and fall.
On the motion by Councilor Marks, seconded by Councilor Falco. All those in favor? Motion passes. Offered by Councilor Marks, be resolved that the stump at 6466 Bowen Avenue be removed. Be it further resolved that the sidewalk at 8789 Bowen Avenue be replaced in the interest of public safety. Vice President Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. The sidewalk at 8789 was dug up, according to the resident, about 4 months ago, and now there's just some orange cones sitting out there with a giant hole waiting for someone to fall into it. So I would ask that DPW go out there immediately. And the tree stump, just from my expertise as an arborist, which I'm not, looks like it's been there for about 25 years, based on the outer coating of the stump itself. So I would ask that stump, Mr. President, be ground down immediately in the interest of public safety. I also, Mr. President, I need to say, in an agenda that had some 18 items, over a third of the items are for tree stump and sidewalks. I mean, there's much more, and those are important issues, but those are the day-to-day issues that should be attended to by the city. There's much more important issues regarding zoning, public safety, airplane noise, things that we should be attending to and discussing, and really not bogging down our agenda with issues that should be, it should be an automatic. So I would hope that the process regarding the sidewalks and streets, especially with the 311 system, where residents can actually reach directly out. The whole reason why we did 311, does the council remember? It was a way that the residents can interact with the city and then get a response. So that tells me one or two things, Mr. President, that the 311 system is not working, and that needs to be revisited, or that, as was mentioned earlier, that we don't have the manpower. I think it was Mr. McKillop that mentioned that. We don't have the manpower to handle the need that we have in a city that's, 7 square miles with 56,000 people in it, Mr. President, and something needs to be done.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. On the motion by Vice President Marks, seconded by Councilor Falco. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. McKillop.
Okay.
I apologize.
No, no worries, no worries. My question on the 311 call, where does it go into, and who's monitoring it, and what kind of a graph comes out of that? Where is that list of all of those items and the age of those items? Because I believe that if you actually take the list, if it's done, if it's there, if it's somewhere, and you go by the age of the issues and you start to break them down, I believe it should be very palatable to get these things done in a seasonable manner and putting it into the budget. So if the first season of the first quarter, you get, 10 of those sidewalks that are 15, 20 years old, that are their issues, you get them out of the way. Then you work on the next 5 to 10-year-old ones, you get those out of the way. Then you work on the next, 1, 2, 3, 4-year-old ones, and you get those out of the way. There's no rhyme or reason as to the way we do this as far as I can see. So where are the 311s going? What list is it on? What is the chronological age of each of these items, and how do we attack this? And that's really what we need to do. It's just, again, common sense, looking at the problems, breaking them down so it's more palatable, you can fit them into the budget so it's easy to do, and you let the people know it's coming, and we're doing it, and we're working on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Offered by Vice President Marks, be it resolved that the sidewalk at 63 Tainter Street be replaced in the interest of public safety. Vice President Marks.
Again, Mr. President, the concrete was broken up and removed some time back, and there is just a hole there waiting for new cement. It's been over several months, and in the interest of public safety, that should be replaced immediately, Mr. President.
Councilor Falco.
Thank you, Mr. President. I received a call about this as well, and went down to take a look at the situation. And like the councilor said, it's just a hole in the ground, and there's no curbing there. I guess a few years ago they tried to plant a tree there, but the tree literally just fell out because there's no curbing to hold the soil in. So really, the curb needs to be replaced. There really needs to be a strategy, I think, for Bowen Street in general. Like Councilor Marks mentioned, I took a drive there as well. The sidewalks are in really bad shape.
There's some flooding issues on Bowen Avenue also.
I mean, a lot of the sidewalks look like they might just need a skim coat, but I mean, just because a few, they just kind of, the top's gone, but there's other sidewalks that are just completely gone.
Yeah,
that
but
need to be-
the upper part of Bowen Avenue has some pretty serious flooding issues when it rains, so I know they're in the midst of addressing those also. On the motion by Vice President Marks, seconded by Councilor Falco. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. The table records. Vice President, I'm sorry, Councilor Knight.
Mr. President, I just want to take a brief opportunity to thank the DPW for the restriping work that they've done on Woburn Street. We put a resolution forward last week asking that the four-way intersections on Woburn Street be repainted, and in short time, they were done. So I'd like to thank Joe Palladino from the sign department and the members of the highway department for their work.
Thank you. Councilor Longo-Kern.
Do you want to talk on that? Oh.
Councilor Longo-Kern.
Thank you, President Carviello. Just before we adjourn, I know that there is no school committee meeting on October 30th, so I'd see if we could maybe take a vote to move our October 31st meeting to October 30th.
If you'd like to make that into a motion?
Yes, please.
Okay. On the motion by Councilor Longo-Kern that we change the October 31st meeting to October 30th, Councilor Della Russo.
I would be opposed to that, Mr. President.
Okay.
And I wouldn't hold it against any counselor who wanted to spend one evening with their children to do it, but I think the people have reasonable expectation that we meet on Tuesday nights. It's been our constant practice. It's part of our rules, and I don't see this as a compelling reason to change the date of a meeting.
Thank you. Vice President Marks.
I was just wondering maybe if the counselor or the council would be amendable to possibly meeting at 6 or 6:30 that night rather than 7 o'clock. It's still a Tuesday. It's, need an hour earlier.
Okay. I think that makes it worse. That makes it worse.
Makes it worse, except.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Councilor Knight.
I was just gonna say that I have no problem, coming on Tuesday night. You know, it's one of the sacrifices that we make. If we have the privilege and opportunity to serve as counselors, that, sometimes we have to spend time away from our family. But with that being said, I think that I can still get some trick-or-treating in between 5 and 7, Mr. President. My kids are young, but, moving it to an earlier time wouldn't work out so well for me.
Okay, on the motion by Councilor Longo Kern that we move the October 31st meeting to October 30th. Seconded by Councilor Scarpelli. All those in favor? The chair seems to be in doubt. Mr. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilor Del Russo. Before I cast my vote, Mr. President, I want to be clear that this is,
Mr. Del Russo, yeah.
that if the counselor were to be absent, again, I state that there is in no way, shape, or form that I would consider her to be shirking on her responsibilities. In fact, I think it's laudatory that a parent would want to be with their child on such an auspicious occasion.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Del Russo. No. Councilor Falco. Councilor Knight. Councilor Kern. Yes. Vice President Marks. Councilor Scarpelli. Yes. President Carviallo.
Yes.
3-4 fail.
4 in the negative, 3 in the positive, motion fails. I apologize. The table records of September. Vice President Marks.
Mr. President, I'd just like to take the opportunity to announce that Boston Pride recently selected the Medford High School Gay Straight Alliance as one of 2 finalists for the Best Youth Group Award at the 2017 Boston Pride Parade. Miss Nicole Shalafo, the club's advisor, followed up with the representatives from the Pride Committee to learn how they were selected. She was told the selections were based on a variety of factors, such as unified group appearance, effort in coordinating, how the group engaged with the crowd and spectators during the parade. They're enthusiastic and full of energy, and the winner will be announced at their fall open house Thursday, October 19th at 6:30 p.m. The event will take place at the Pride's new office space at 12 Channel Street in Boston, which is in the Seaport District. And I just want to commend the GSA, the Gay Straight Alliance at Medford High School, Mr. President, for a job well done.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. And if I could mention one thing, if the council could send its prayers to and support to Marguerite Mandarini, who was struck by a car on Friday evening and hurt pretty seriously. She's in the hospital, and I think both of her legs were broken, her pelvis. So if we could send our prayers to her, it would be appreciated.
Is that West Medford also?
Yes. Yeah. So there was 3 accidents in West Medford last week. So, but Marguerite was hurt pretty seriously. So if we could send our prayers to her. The tabled records of the meeting of September 19th were passed to Councilor Scarpelli. Councilor Scarpelli, how did you find those records? Did you make it?
Finally, I find those records in order and move approval.
Thank you very, very much. The records of the meeting of October 3rd were passed to Councilor Falco. Councilor Falco, how did you find the records?
I reviewed the records. They appear to be in order, and I move approval.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Knight.
Paper 17668, Amendment A.
17668.
The amendment was made by, I was the sponsor of the initial paper. You were the sponsor of the amendment.
On which week?
October 3rd, 2017. It's the
Councilor
third item
Falco.
on the agenda.
Councilor Falco, if you could verify Councilor Knight's question there.
Please,
If you look at 17668,
yes.
I was the lead sponsor on the paper.
Okay.
Councilor Carviallo was the one that amended it.
So if we could have the,
So if you could
City
amend
clerk
that
make
to the
that
clerk.
correction.
Councilor Caviello the
So
credit.
if we could have, approve the minutes as amended.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Del Russo. We will make a notation of that. On the motion by Councilor Longo Kern that we accept the records of September 19th, seconded by Councilor Del Russo. Motion passes. On the motion by Councilor Scarpelli that we accept the amended records as a pass to Councilor Falco, seconded by Councilor Del Russo. All those in favor? Motion passes. Motion by Councilor Knight, meeting to adjourn. Seconded by Councilor Falco. All those in favor? Meeting is adjourned.